Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for January 26th, 2018. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest movie news, including the truth behind the new Crocodile Dundee movie, the latest shenanigans from MoviePass, the Shining sequel getting a director, Steven Spielberg's next two films, the first set photos from Captain Marvel, some big changes at the Weinstein Company, Big Little Lies Season 2 has added a big A-list star, and finally, a Mission Impossible 6 title and new photos from that movie. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined today by the managing editor, Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
And writers Hoai Tran-Bui.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
All right, so as you guys heard, we have a lot of news to cover today. I am stepping in for our regular host, Peter Soretta. So, Peter, we wish you well. He'll be back, I think, probably early next week. So let's just go ahead and dive straight into news. So, Jacob, I think on one of the previous episodes of this show, we were talking about this bizarre Crocodile Dundee movie, and now the truth has finally come out about this thing. What is going on with this?
Well, as listeners may remember, or as those of you on the internet have probably seen, there have been a series of teasers for a movie called Dundee, the Son of a Legend Returns Home, which was being presented as a sequel to Crocodile Dundee, the comedy series starring Paul Hogan that originated in the 80s about an Australian, what would be the word here, adventurer, wilderness expert.
I think so, yeah.
Who goes on various adventures in Australia and the United States. And the joke here was that Dan McBride would be playing his long-lost American son, and Chris Hemsworth would be playing the goofy sidekick to McBride's Brian Dundee. And by the time we saw the second teaser, as we talked about previously on this show, we all started to suspect that this was a joke, a gag, maybe even a Super Bowl commercial. And it turns out that we were completely right. Australia's Brisbane Times reports that it is, in fact, a marketing campaign for Tourism Australia, tipped off because Chris Hemsworth is actually an ambassador for Australian tourism. So Australians actually kind of got the heads up there before us because they knew that, and we Americans did not. And the scuttlebutt is that we'll be seeing an advertisement or start of a new campaign with the Super Bowl. And it means the Australian government has spent a couple $1 million, or however much it is, to buy airtime during the Super Bowl to create this lavish new campaign to convince Americans to go visit Australia using Hollywood stars and Crocodile Dundee as a name. And this actually isn't unusual because Paul Hogan starred in a series of Australian tourism ads in the 80s, which were all about, hey, look, it's Crocodile Dundee, go to visit Australia, it's beautiful. And they seem to be kind of doing the same thing here, but instead of being a shirtless Paul Hogan, it is now Danny McBride acting very silly. So this isn't very surprising, but I think we're all weirdly bummed out that this isn't actually real because a new clip arrived today that was actually pretty funny. What do you guys think?
We are played for fools. I was actually quite excited for this movie. Like once I sort of said, this would actually make a great comedy. I would really enjoy it. Danny McBride and Chris Hemsworth sounds like a great combination. I love to see Chris Hemsworth stretch out his comedy chops. But yeah, it's not a real thing. But the clip you were talking about, Jacob, is hilarious. And it's a minute long and just makes me wish we could see the whole movie.
Chris, I know you changed your Slack avatar profile photo to something from this fake Crocodile Dundee movie. What did you think about the new clip that came out today?
Yeah, the clip is great. I too am upset that it's not a real movie. I'm hoping because Super Bowl commercials, they can only be so long, and I'm wondering just how much footage they really shot for this, because they didn't just create fake trailers, they created fake clips, and I'm wondering if one day all of this footage is going to be just put together somewhere. I hope it will, because I will watch it. Just release a Blu-ray or something. Go ahead, I'll buy it.
It should be noted that the ads are directed by Steve Rogers, not the Avenger, but a commercial director who's done ads for Nike, Old Spice, and Audi. And the ads are actually really beautifully made. They're really well shot, and they showcase the Australian wilderness quite well. So even though the focus is initially on, hey, look at Dan McBride be very silly, as an ad for how varied the landscapes and cultures of Australia is, I think it could be a pretty effective little ad.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on. We do have a lot to cover. So Meryl Streep is going to be starring in the second season of Big Little Lies, the HBO, what was originally planned to be a limited series, but is now sort of blown up into such a big cultural touchstone that now that it's getting a second season. She is going to be playing, I'll try to dance around this without really spoiling the first season too much, because I know people are still coming to that show, as you should, because it's fantastic. She's going to be playing the mother of a character who dies in the first season, and she sort of rolls into this beachside town to try to discover the truth about what happened to that deceased character. And I'll leave it at that. But this is the first time that Meryl Streep is going to be starring in a major TV show since she won an Emmy in the early 2000s for her work in Angels in America. I think she was on something called Web Therapy that Lisa Kudrow did, and like a couple years ago, but that is not really like a full-blown major TV show in the same way that something like Big Little Lies is. For me, I watched Big Little Lies, and as soon as the first season ended, I was like, okay, I'm glad that that's done and it's wrapped up neatly, and that was a great, sort of mini event. But then as soon as they announced the second season, I was like, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to recapture the greatness of what they did with that first season. The idea of Meryl Streep coming on board definitely alleviates some of my concern. Did anybody else watch the first season of Big Little Lies, and is anybody else excited about Meryl coming to HBO?
I think your silence is your answer there. Has anybody else seen this? My wife's been begging me to watch it, and I think now that Meryl's in season 2, I'm going to be catching back up. But I've heard nothing but acclaim, and my reaction has always been, I'll get around to it, and now I guess I have to.
It's really, really good. So if anybody else out there who's listening is in the same boat as Jacob, I would definitely recommend catching up before season 2 comes. I think you still probably have a little bit of time, because the expectation is that season 2 is going to be coming back to HBO sometime in 2019. So there's a little bit of time there. Let's move on to Mission Impossible 6. So HT, Tom Cruise has joined Instagram and revealed the title for Mission Impossible 6. What is it, and what do we know about this movie?
So Tom Cruise has announced informally the title for Mission Impossible 6 with not one, but 2 deadly stunts in which he showcased on his Instagram and his Twitter. So the title for Mission Impossible 6 is Mission Impossible Fallout. Hopefully not an indicator of how the stunts will go. But it's supposed to be something that deals with perhaps nuclear fallout, the fallout of Ethan Hunt's relationships, personal and professional. And that's the only clue that we've gotten from the director. But the stunts that Tom Cruise has been performing for the Mission Impossible films have been sort of progressively getting more and more dangerous and amazing to watch, but also very concerning for the actor, who is perhaps Hollywood's best special effect, as Jacob said in his article. But the first stunt we see him is hanging off a helicopter, which is something we actually have kind of seen him do before in the last Mission Impossible movie, where he was hanging off the side of the airplane. And then the next stunt was the more spectacular one, where he was jumping between buildings without a harness or a net in sight. And it definitely looks like something that would do bodily harm or fatal harm to someone. And maybe it's the stunt that got him injured that led to the delay of the production of Mission Impossible 6. We won't know. Tom Cruise seems very proud of it. And now that he's got an Instagram, we'll probably see him sharing more and more of his daring adventures.
Yeah, this photo, well, it should also be mentioned that the photo of him hanging off the side of the helicopter, at first when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, this is sort of, we've seen this kind of thing been done before. But then I noticed that it doesn't appear to be piloted by anyone. It seems like it's just hanging out there in the middle of the sky. So I'm not really sure if he's entering or exiting this helicopter, but I'm sort of excited to see what the hell is going on there. Chris or Jacob, do you guys have any thoughts about that photo, or the one where he's like, midair, looking like a hardcore parkour person, like mid-building?
Actually, just moments before we started recording this, I was watching a clip from the Graham Norton show that literally just hit, where Tom Cruise is discussing this injury. It turns out this photo is of the injury, and they actually brought footage, unfinished footage from the shoot, of Cruise injuring himself in various angles. You can actually see the safety harness attached to him in the shot, even though it looks like an actual shot from the movie, as he slams into the wall and breaks his ankle. So we'll put that in the show notes, and it's actually, so yeah, confirmed. This is the stunt, not the one where he's hanging out the helicopter, but the one where he's jumping is the one where Tom Cruise had to delay production because he broke his ankle.
Wow. All right, let's move on to Captain Marvel. So, Chris, I think it was yesterday, the first set photos from Marvel Studios' Captain Marvel hit the internet, featuring Brie Larson in a costume that looked a little bit like the Green Power Ranger, right? What do we know about this?
Yeah, so yeah, obviously these are set photos. They're not, they're not color corrected. They're not, being shot through a cinematographer's eye. They're set photos, so they're not going to look like this in the film. But for our first, official, or I guess unofficial look at Captain Marvel, they're slightly underwhelming. I mean, for one thing, the costume is green, which, as many people have pointed out, the original Captain Marvel costume was green, but I don't really care. It just looks bad. So I think the color, I don't care if it was the original color. It doesn't look that great. And someone actually created a Photoshop version that changes the colors to the more traditional colors, and the Photoshop actually looks really good. So I guess like green is just not Brie Larson's color for some reason. It's the only explanation I could think of. But again, these are set photos. They're not, how it's going to look in the final film, but it is slightly underwhelming, I have to say.
So, HT, what did you think about these?
It's a really good photo of Rita Repulsa. I was also a little underwhelmed by the photo of the costume. I was very excited about the concept art that was introduced of Brie Larson in costume at Comic-Con last year, and it did not look very similar, but once we did see the Photoshop version of it with the colors inserted, it did seem closer to the concept art. So I'm guessing either maybe like the green is the original Captain Marvel costume we see, or the colors are getting digitally inserted by a green screen.
Mm-hmm. And I think our own Brad Oman was mentioning in our Slack channel that he was sort of wondering that if Hank Pym had anything to do with the creation of this suit, because it reminded him a little bit of the Ant-Man suit, and we know this is a period piece. Jacob, do you think there's any validity to that?
I think it's a good suggestion. I do think that all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe costumes do have the same aesthetic, which is the basic iconography made more realistic in quotation marks. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make that connection, bring back the digitally de-aged Michael Douglas for a cameo and have him make a suit. It makes sense. I, like you guys, don't have super strong feelings about this, but like I said, I'm also waiting to see how this looks when it's actually lit properly in camera and with the right colors, because that Photoshop's really good and so much better than the version we're seeing here. But then again, remember, the first Iron Man suit was a pile of junk. Second one was a silver-looking monotonous thing, and then Tony Stark got his classic armor in time for the third act. So I think we're going to see something similar here.
Yeah, for sure. So this is one of those stories that I haven't even had a chance to read yet. The Weinstein Company is getting a brand new name and a female-friendly makeover. HT, educate me. What's happening here?
So the Weinstein Company is in the midst of a sort of bidding war for new purchasers to take over the company, which is approximately $350 million in debt. And this is kind of going to get in the weeds, but I will say that the headline is I'm not going to say misleading, but they haven't yet decided on a new name. Essentially, the office is moving to a new luxury office near the Broad Green Pictures Larchmont Village area in LA, and they're trying to change the name as well as change the office workspace to make it more female friendly. The name because it's so closely connected to Harvey Weinstein, and they want to distance themselves as much as possible from it, and the female friendly makeover because they want to make it a more inclusive and welcoming space for female workers and female employees. So the names that have been suggested by some marketing companies for the Weinstein Company include Assembly Hall or Creative Trade Studios. So something, or Wonder Hill. Sorry, that was the last one. So there's nothing that's been set in stone for the new name yet, and the female-friendly makeover involves more private breastfeeding rooms for new moms, and a more open workspace, like I was saying. And they're going away from the grand private sanctums that Hollywood executives would often receive in the old offices. So the Weinstein Company is kind of in the midst of a lot of change right now because they are currently looking to be bought by Maria Contreras Sweet, who is a former small business administrator under President Obama. So she's in talks to purchase the indie distributor for around $500 million and would instate a new majority female board of directors and investors.
I mean, to me, that sounds like the best possible outcome for, a company that seemed to be just like basically the Hollywood equivalent of the actual garbage fire that everyone sort of always talks about Hollywood being. I mean, is there any way, do we know anything more about this person? Do we think that does she have any film experience? Do we know sort of what she might be doing with the company and whether they're going to, sort of stay in the same genres and the same lane, for lack of a better term, that the current Weinstein Company was in?
Yeah, we don't know much other than she's in talks to purchase the company, although she is reportedly contributing around $20 million to a multi-million-dollar victim fund that the Weinstein Company is establishing for Harvey Weinstein's accusers. So that's a big step in the right direction for the Weinstein Company. We don't really know what direction she'll take the company in. We know that she'll be lessening their debt that they're currently in as well, but otherwise we're not really sure like what direction the Weinstein Company will be going in after this, or whether any filmmakers would really be willing to work with them, because a lot of filmmakers and films have been kind of dropped off after the events of the Harvey Weinstein scandal.
Right. Yeah, I think the current war is probably the big loser in that whole situation. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with that movie. If it's going to get picked up by somebody else. I don't think any real word has come out about that, but we'll keep you guys posted if we hear anything else. Let's move on to Steven Spielberg. So Spielberg has Ready Player One coming out this March, but he is always a prolific movie maker. He is one of the fastest filmmakers out there, as evidenced by him throwing The Post together basically in between movies last year. Chris, what do we know about his next two projects?
Yeah, so Steven Spielberg is 71 years old, and he shows no signs of slowing down. Like you said, he made The Post and Ready Player One pretty much on top of each other, and now news just broke that he's casting for a remake of West Side Story, the musical. There's an open casting call for that now, but also he's planning on shooting the 5th Indiana Jones film with an intention of releasing that in 2020. So West Side Story, there's not an actual word on when the shooting is going to start on that, but Indiana Jones is expected to start shooting in 2019. So look for those two films very soon, probably. My guess is they'll come out months apart, kind of like The Post and Ready Player One are doing.
And I think the report that I was reading was talking about how Spielberg is really looking to dip into the Latino community for casting for West Side Story, which is something that the original film didn't really do.
Right.
I mean, it had like a couple people of Latino descent, or somebody who is Puerto Rican, I think, played one of the main roles, but for the most part, it was sort of a mishmash of cultural backgrounds for that movie. But it seems like this time he's going to be trying to stay more culturally appropriate, I guess, with the casting. Is that right?
Yeah, the Hollywood Reporter reports that the reason the casting is starting right now is because Spielberg is taking the casting of this film very important. Basically, the whole project hinges on the casting, and if he doesn't get that right, he doesn't want to make it. So he's definitely very focused on getting that element right.
And this is something, a passion project of his that he's been talking about, wanting to make a musical for a long time, and it's specifically wanting to make a remake of West Side Story for a long time as well. HC or Jacob, do you guys have any thoughts about this? Is this even with Spielberg behind the camera, is this blasphemy to try to remake West Side Story?
Well, here's my blasphemous response, and that's the original West Side Story. The movie is only okay. I don't think it's as good as its reputation suggests. And I think the thought of Spielberg making a musical that on stage is much better than the movie is very exciting. And they haven't announced too much about this, but the early word is that it's being modernized. So instead of taking place in the New York of years gone by, it'll be more modernized New York, which I think is a fascinating place to stage a musical about criminal gangs, a Romeo and Juliet retelling in modern day New York with that racial backdrop could be genuinely fascinating. And as a side note, I do love that this will be, I think, the fourth time Spielberg has made two movies essentially in 1 year, because he had Schindler's List and Jurassic Park. He had Munich and War of the Worlds. He had The Post, and he had Ready Player One, and now he has these two. And I think those are my favorite years. The years where Spielberg says, I'm going to make my art film and my blockbuster popcorn movie at the exact same time, and that's why he's the best.
Very cool. Aishi, do you have any thoughts about this? Do you have any feelings about the original West Side Story?
I like the original West Side Story. I'm not particularly connected to it, but I'm really excited to see Steven Spielberg take on a musical because this is the first time he's ever done so. And I think his sort of directorial flourishes are really well suited to a musical. So I'm not sure why he hasn't done it before.
Jacob, let's talk about Gerald's Game director Mike Flanagan and his next project. What does he have on tap?
Well, Mike Flanagan is one of our most promising horror filmmakers out there now. Maybe promising is not the right word. He's genuinely one of the best guys making horror movies right now. And he's staying in the Stephen King business after Gerald's Game last year with an adaptation of Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to The Shining, and not a sequel to the movie The Shining, sequel to Stephen King's novel The Shining. And this is interesting for a number of reasons. One, it's interesting because it's Mike Flanagan making another Stephen King horror movie. He's very good at that. Gerald's Game is very good. It's on Netflix, and you should watch it. But also because Dr. Sleep is very much a sequel to Stephen King's novel. Stanley Kubrick's movie adaptation of The Shining strays a lot from the original book, both in terms of plot and in terms of tone. And King is very vocal about not being a fan of what Kubrick did to his book. I love them both. I think a lot of people love them both. So I'm curious on one level if Dr. Sleep will attempt to be a sequel to the movie or to the book, or to maybe try to hedge its bets and be a sequel to both, so people who are familiar with one or the other can both see it. But the basic gist of the book is that it follows Danny Torrance, the kid from the first movie. He was grown up. He's become an alcoholic. He's become a bit of a walking train wreck. He sobers up, regains his psychic powers, tries to help people with them. Supernatural chaos runs amok. And the weird thing here is that this is not a good book. I think Chris can back me up here because he's the other Stephen King fan on this call. But if anyone can make this good, it's Mike Flanagan, because Gerald's Game is an unadaptable book made into somehow a really good movie. Chris, do you think Dr. Sleep can be a good movie with Flanagan here?
I do think in Mike Flanagan's hands, it will be good. The book is I dare say terrible, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan, but this book is bad. And I was very excited when the book was announced, because it's like, oh, Stephen King doesn't write a lot of sequels. All his books are connected, but he doesn't really write sequels. So when it was announced that he's writing a sequel to The Shining, I got so excited. I got the book, and like 10 pages into it, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. And I was right. It was terrible. But there are good ideas in the book. So I think if Mike Flanagan ignores 90% of the book and focuses on the good ideas, he can turn this into something good.
That is fascinating. HT, you haven't read this book, right?
I have not.
Okay, yeah, me neither. We'll leave it to the Stephen King fans to talk about that one.
But it should be pointed out real quick that Mike Flanagan is really busy. I mean, he just released Gerald's Game. He's currently making a TV adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House for Netflix. Then he's moving right into Dr. Sleep. And this is after he did the surprisingly good Ouija, Origin of Evil, Hush, Oculus. He's just nonstop busy, and all his movies have been good. And like, this round of applause for Mike Flanagan for somehow like not screwing up any of these movies. We actually have a big article written by Chris on the site about how good Mike Flanagan is. He's just been toiling away and just consistently being impressive. So I think this is really exciting news.
Yeah, and Gerald's Game was really good, and I think it's also important to note that he is rewriting a script that was originally written by Akiva Goldsman, who is a writer of mixed
he's
repute,
terrible.
I guess. Yeah, he's pretty. I'm trying
He's
to be
really
nice, but
he's really bad. He wrote The Dark Tower, and that was terrible. So
yeah,
he has his
exactly.
name attached to a lot of things.
Yeah, and he's like one of those guys that is responsible for like the cinematic universe of the Transformers movies, and he's one of those guys that must be a much better producer than he is a writer, because he's been around for a long time. I think he has an Oscar win or at least nomination for A Beautiful Mind. But
he won that thing like 4
yeah,
years
he
after writing Batman and Robin. He won an Oscar.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that Flanagan, at least from the sound of it at this stage, is going to be sort of taking over the project and really sort of putting his own spin on it, because I agree Gerald's Game was really good, and I think this project has a lot of potential if Chris is right, if he's able to mine and excavate the good nuggets out of Stephen King's book. That should be something to see. So let's move on to our last news item of this episode, and that is the shenanigans going on with MoviePass. So actually, I know, HT, you wrote an article about this, but Chris, you did too, not too long ago. So Chris, why don't you tell us about how MoviePass removed a few theaters from their list of acceptable theaters that they work with, and then HT can follow up with maybe the reasoning behind why they might have done that.
So the other day, news broke that several large, high-traffic AMC theaters are no longer honoring MoviePass, and AMC has had trouble with MoviePass in the past. Just they don't like their model. But it was actually not AMC who stopped them. It was MoviePass themselves who basically pulled this move and turned those theaters off. And at the time, it was speculated that it was probably due to just high ticket prices. MoviePass did not want to deal with these theaters selling movie tickets for $20.
So that was part of the reason, the high ticket prices. But the main reason seems to be that MoviePass is using their subscription base as leverage against AMC. So what happened was MoviePass was pulling coverage from these 10 AMC locations, and it basically had a lot of this language saying MoviePass subscribers are not theater loyal. They're happy to drive to a theater that accepts MoviePass because of the MoviePass value. And it was revealed in their announcement that MoviePass currently represents approximately 62% of AMC's operating income. So
I mean, that's a huge percentage.
Huge percentage. So by taking away their subscribers from the biggest AMC theaters, they're taking away possibly a huge portion of income for AMC. And the reason they're doing this is they're trying to leverage this against AMC to turn a bigger profit. So essentially, they're trying to we've been kind of questioning how sustainable their business model is, and what they're trying to do now is more aggressively persuade theaters to start sharing increased revenue from concession sales. So they've already approached AMC with a deal, asking AMC for a slice of admissions and concessions, which would make around $2 million a week, according to MoviePass insiders. So they're seeking currently a $3 cut on AMC tickets plus 20% of concessions. So AMC for now has said they have no intention of sharing any admissions revenue or concessions revenue with MoviePass. But at this point, MoviePass is kind of playing hardball with AMC and is basically using their subscribers as fodder and as pawns in this game to get more money, which I'm sure subscribers who are close to these big theaters that got taken off the service are not completely happy about. But in the end, MoviePass is a really good deal. I mean, I was one of those people who my main AMC theater that was close to me got taken off MoviePass. So I'm a little bit miffed, but in the end, I'll probably just end up going to a AMC that's a little further away.
Yeah. So it seems to me like AMC is intimidated by, these new guys who are rolling in and starting to flex their muscles a little bit. Jacob, do you think that that AMC should give in to MoviePass's demands, or do you think they're trying to just weather the storm here and see how long MoviePass is going to be able to stick around? Because we know, I think we reported the other day that on the show that MoviePass is now getting into distribution. They're like co-acquiring movies with different distribution companies and stuff. So it seems like they're making moves to become, a more significant player in the industry on top of already being responsible for an insane percentage of AMC's revenue. Do you think that AMC people are sort of shaking in their boots here, or do you think they're just like, locking things down and just waiting for MoviePass to die out?
This is a really good question, and one that I'm going to plead the fifth on, because this is a showdown between two garbage companies. You have AMC in one corner, probably who tend to supply such terrible theater-going experiences all over the country, and you have MoviePass, this young gun who's going to be broke in 7 months if they don't find a way to make money. It's like trying to have a showdown with this other major company the most obnoxious way possible by leveraging their customers against them. And I'm just going to sit back and watch them both burn at each other for now and see who comes out on top. I don't have MoviePass. I don't go to AMC. I'm blessed to live in a city where I have much better options. But right now, I think it's just this weird game of chicken between two companies that I have no stake in, and I think are making bad choices all around. MoviePass, very recent bad choices. And AMC making bad choices for, over a decade now, for as long as they haven't been replacing bulbs in their theaters or projecting films with the right matting or doing anything right. So screw them both. Screw them both. Burn it all down.
So I'm also in a position living in Los Angeles where there really isn't an AMC that's close and easily accessible for me. So I end up going to different kind of theaters. But Chris, I'm wondering, do you have MoviePass, and is an AMC your sort of a preferred theater of choice due to convenience? Does this affect you in any way?
Well, I live in the Philadelphia region, which has terrible theaters, so I have really no choice but to go to AMC's. I don't have MoviePass, and this is going to make me sound very snobby and elitist, but I don't really pay for movies. When I go to the movies, I go to press screenings 9 times out of 10, so I haven't really had a need for MoviePass. Yeah. And, the rare times when I go, I just, I go to a matinee and pay that price.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
sort of
AMC is terrible. So.
All right. Well, yeah. I guess we'll just have to wait and see who blinks first in this bizarre game of chicken, and whether or not the customers end up, rising up and revolting because they're basically being played as the fools in between this ridiculous game between these two companies. But that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of Slash Film Daily. This podcast is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features that you can find at slashfilm.com. You can find all of the stories that we talked about on today's show at slashfilm.com, and you can subscribe to this show on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all of the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, or comments to us at peter@slashfilm.com, and leave your name and general geographic location in case we want to mention that on the air if we read your email. Please rate and review the show on iTunes and spread the word. And let's go around the circle real quickly, and you guys tell me where we can find more of your work on the internet. Jacob, let's start with you.
I'm on slashfilm.com every single day, and on Twitter at Jacob S. Hall.
HT?
I'm also at slashfilm.com. I'm on Twitter at Tran-Bui.
And Chris?
I, too, am at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista 413.
And my name is Ben. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Pearson. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you guys on Monday.